Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
I love thrillers, so when I heard that young writer Madeleine Henry, who's written a couple of other books, I'm going to let her tell you, that I have read, has come out with a new thriller called My Favorite Terrible Thing, I was really all excited, and it didn't disappoint. You know, everyone has something that's their relaxation, that whatever they like to do. I'm a big reader, and thrillers are what I love to read. It's like my sleeping pill at night. I start to read, and unlike a lot of people who say don't get yourself too stimulated at night when you read, it's such a pleasure for me. And in Madeleine's latest book, My Favorite Terrible Thing, I went on the good journey with her. And I'm not going to tell you, I don't like to give away fiction, but it's about a writer, a young writer who's a best-selling author. And this writer has disappeared from the Hamptons on her wedding day. And no one knows why. Everyone's got a different theory, like what could have happened? It's such a great day. And a young detective is at this job. She's been hired to find the missing author and to, as it says in one of the descriptions, her job is to find the truth. And she's looking for the truth in a different place. Everyone does the obvious, but this young woman's job is to look in the novel of the missing person and try to see what clues she has. So, Madeleine, I remember when you were working on Wall Street and you had told me that the strain of that what all of you face when you go from school and then you end up on Wall Street where you're working almost 24 hours a day. So
Yes.
So what made you decide to change course again and write your books?
That's a great question. So my first novel was a comedy about an investment banker who desperately wants to be a yogi. And
Right.
so that was published shortly after I left the financial world. And it's satire of the New York City financial crowd, but it doesn't spare yogis either and pokes fun at the workout industry that's grown out of the spiritual practice. And at that point, after that book came out, I was a full-time writer, and so I kept writing. And my second novel was completely different. It was a love story about a physicist who tries to prove that the ones we love are always connected to us. And it was written with a very different tone from my first. So while the first novel was sarcastic and edgy, the love proof is earnest and heart-wrenching. So those were really polar opposites. And now My Favorite Terrible Thing, which is my third novel, is different again as a suspense with a mystery element.
Right.
And to make sense of the switches, I would just say that I'm creatively attracted to all genres. And there's definitely a part of me that would love to write even historical fiction or science fiction or more comedy or more romance. And when I'm unselfconsciously creative, a lot of different forms and genres come out. But then after my second novel, I started to think longer term. And I believe that to have some longevity as an author, it's helpful to be consistent. And your readers should generally know what to expect. Otherwise, it will probably be hard to maintain an audience. And so after my second novel, I thought, well, if I'm going to keep writing, I really should be consistent in terms of genre. And so the question of what do I want to write today is very different from the question of what do I want to write over and over again. And so I really do like the suspense genre with a mystery element. I like mind bending. I like, as I call them, pretty sentences. And so I view My Favorite Terrible Thing as the beginning of a direction where I would like to continue. So
Right.
hopefully there is more consistency genre-wise going forward.
No, and as a reader, we like that too, because we want to go along the path and find out more and what happens, and you don't want to lose the characters. When I was finishing this, I thought someone should pick this up, and I heard that you did. Did you sell it to the movies?
I actually can't comment on that publicly, but the rights are not for sale
Anymore.
Anymore, no.
Okay, well, that's good. And
Yes.
I thought what fun this would be on a TV series. You know, we used to love those murder mysteries or whatever on Sunday nights, and we need something like My Favorite Terrible Thing to sort of step in. And
Oh, that's very kind.
no, but it would be terrific, and we don't have that now. And when I
Yeah.
read this book, I thought, hey, maybe this can happen, because the characters are so good and so strong, and so many surprises in the book that there's a lot to keep it going.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I think it would appeal to fans of Gone Girl, which had a great
Right.
adaptation. And so, again, there are some major twists like Gone Girl. It has a dark, moody atmosphere like Gone Girl. And so people who are drawn to that story, I think, would also enjoy this one.
Right, and the main characters, now, I don't know if this was on purpose or by accident, are almost all women. There's one husband in there somewhere. But
Yes, that's a really interesting observation. You have the private investigator, Nina Travers, who's a woman, and then the missing author, Claire Ross. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think it's actually a theme in this book and the next one about how female relationships have the power to structure institutions and to structure groups more broadly. So it's definitely a theme in my work to look at how women relate and the ripple effects of female relationships.
yeah, well, good job. And I love the fact that in an interview someone had sent me, the first date you ever had with your then fiance was someone who took you to the dog show, which I absolutely love. It just sort of finished in New York. But he took you to the Meet the Breeds, everyone's favorite event, when you get to see all the dogs you think you're going to have. And of course you're not. But that was great. All these dogs, and there you were. A very smart place to take a date.
Yes, he definitely did some research on that, having our first date be an occasion where I literally pet every single kind of dog that there is. And there was another floor of animals that was all cats. And so it was just like an adult petting zoo.
Yeah, so much fun.
And then we watched the small dogs on an agility test.
Yeah.
Which was just a riot. And it was like being inside the movie Best in Show. And now we've been together 6 years, and we just had our first kid. So the date definitely worked. Yes.
Yeah, but how do you fit in everything? A new baby is so time-consuming and exhausting, too, in many instances. So how do you fit this in and still allow yourself time without really feeling pressured to write?
Well, that's very kind of you. So I would say that books are generally done a year before they publish.
Right.
However, I still have a book coming out next year, and I'm working on the one after that. So it's definitely a full schedule. And I would say that at the end of the day, it just comes down to being kind to yourself, because you just can't get to everything. And you just have to embrace it all as part of the magic of having a newborn, is that not everything is going to get done on your own time. But I guess that's part of the journey of being a parent, is realizing that there are more important things than yourself, and helping you see the bigger picture. So I'm doing my best, but I also have some perspective.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
And where did your interest, and it's a good thing too, because it can help you get through, yoga come from? Was that something you had done from the time you were a kid?
So I got very interested in yoga while I was working full-time in finance, mostly because the lifestyle was just so crushing that I really needed a place to slow down and really nurture myself physically, emotionally, spiritually. There was just a lot that was missing when you're working those kind of hours at an investment bank and in related fields. And so I found yoga, and I really loved that it was the only place in my life at the time telling me that doing less was doing more. And it was a really comforting oasis for me. And so I really loved yoga. I built it into my daily routine while I was working in finance, and I started a yoga-based Instagram, which is still out there, Madeleine Henry Yoga, where I would share bits of my practice with other people, and found an online community for it. And then yoga was a big theme in my first novel. But know that it was not a long time interest. It was really found as an adult. And I've found that the more that I'm writing, I actually feel nurtured in all those places that yoga used to take care of me. It's creative. It helps me think in different ways, and I don't feel as crushed as I did in the financial world. So I find that I'm doing less yoga these days, but it really was just a wonderful oasis when I needed it in a harder period of my life.
And Madeleine, when you were paying your dues in the financial world, and I remember being surprised, I had talked to you at that time, the kind of hours and stress was involved for so many of you. You had a lot of kids who came out of school, and a lot of the Ivies went into finance, and it was like 24 hours a day, constantly working. So when you got out of college, had you already started writing, or were you into the money? I don't mean being paid the money, into the world of money.
Right. So I have always wanted to be a writer. It really is a lifelong dream. And when I was in college, I actually invented a course where I could write a novel for credit. So I went to Yale, and at that point, I went up to the chair of the English department as a senior, and I asked if I could write a book, take an entire semester, write a book, and get a course credit for it. And they were very generous. They allowed me to do it, and I did that twice. So I wrote 2 books my senior year for course credit, neither of which has been published, which is probably for the best, to be honest.
Right.
And then from there, I kept writing on the side while I was an investment banker. And then as I changed jobs after investment banking, and then finally sold my first book in 2018.
Now, was that through an agent? How did that process take place?
Yes. So that was through an agent. It was through a cold query. So that actually works. And I've been with the same agent now for 6
3
years,
books.
and I think we've sold 5 books together.
Wow.
So in 3 different genres. So it really was the beginning of an amazing relationship.
And you didn't know her. It wasn't like, someone said, oh, I have my best friend or my family. Was this a blind inquiry when you first reached out to her?
Yes, so it actually does. I'm one of the rare cases
Success
where
story.
that actually works. It's there's a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel where if you send in your manuscript, someone will read it.
Right. Was it a long process, or this was fairly fast?
It was a pretty long process. I did revisions on my first book with my agent for months, and then with a publisher for months. And I'd say that books just take so much longer than I'd ever imagined from the outside, but it's just part of what makes them so special is the intensity of thought and the depth of thought that goes into every one.
Mm-hmm. And so the process was longer than you thought, but at what point did you know that it was starting to really work?
I would say that the magic kicks in after about a year of work, where I start to see the pieces really coming together. And I really do believe that the more you rewrite something, the better it becomes. And so, for example, in my favorite terrible thing, Claire Ross, who is the missing author,
Right.
has written a very popular book. She's written something called The Starlit Ballet. And I won't give away anything except I won't. And so I actually wrote Claire's book as part of the process.
Yeah.
So I wrote, and it's a historical fiction-based genre novel. And so I wrote that as part of my process, which is probably unnecessary, but you'll find in the book that there is a lot of depth to the story.
Right.
There are quotes from it. It has a following that's very developed. And I think that came about as a result of spending all that time to really do the world building. So I believe that the more you invest in creating the fictional world, the better the product turns out to be.
And what about when this started to work and the agent and it was all coming together? Was it easier the second go round?
I would say there are pros and cons to the second novel. I would say you definitely have a better grasp of narrative structure. You have a better idea of what nuances to give characters so that they resonate with people, how to bring people to life. But at the same time, my least favorite part of the entire creative process is probably the starting from zero part. I find it to be very scary and unpleasant. And so the more content I have to work with, I love editing. I'm a great editor, but the actual building and putting the bricks together on the bottom layer is very hard for me.
Yeah, well, I think it would be hard for anyone, and especially when a new baby entered the world at this point, too. I don't know how you did it. How do you do it? Do you allow time every day for work, and how can that fit in?
Yeah, well, to be very transparent, we have a nanny who comes from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so I definitely have that
to
time
do it, right.
carved out. However, this is going to make me sound maybe not so great, but when I was doing edits for a book coming out next year, this past January, when I had an 8-week-old, and I would actually get up at 2 a.m, and then I would just edit until the baby got up, because that was the only time
you could
that
do
I
it.
had. I know, but it was a short stint. But there's time if you look for it.
Yeah, but it's not easy, right?
No, yeah.
No. And how was your husband during all this? Helpful?
Oh, yes. I am blessed to have an incredibly supportive partner. He is in love with our baby. He wants to change every diaper to be close to her. So I feel lucky.
You are lucky.
Yes, my grandmother tells me it was not always that way. So I'm glad for that. But he's very helpful, and he makes a lot of my work possible with all the support that he brings into the family.
Right. Does he read your books when you're in the process?
I actually am very shy about sharing my books with him. And to be honest, he has never read a book that I've written. So I've written 5 since we've met, and I just feel like it would be strange if he read my book.
Right. It's not part of the program.
Yes, that's true. And although he does read every review that comes in for the books, and so he has an idea of how it's being perceived, of how everyone is interpreting it, but he does not read the book itself by request.
Well, it sounds like you're on to something really great. And is the next book in work?
Yes, I just saw a cover, so I'm very excited about it. And I will say that for people who really love My Favorite Terrible Thing, there is more like it on the way.
Yeah, that's not only was the book really a good book to read, but the cover is terrific.
Yes, so I fell in love with it because I love the fraying word thing on the cover, which it starts out in very crisp block letters,
right.
And then the final word begins to splinter, which suggests a lot about the directions the plot will go.
Right. Well, you did a great job, and you started this, which is a good lesson for a lot of people who write and who want to write, when you were still at college.
Yes. And I listen to a lot of author interviews, and I listen to a lot of authors give advice to other authors. And one piece of advice that comes up, maybe more than any other piece of advice, is to stick with it, and to persevere and to be patient, because it takes a lot longer, not just to create the products, but to break into the industry too than anyone might think. So it just is a long race. But if you get into it because you love it, then you'll be able to.
You can hold on, but you were lucky in a way in that you understood this. And when it came to agents and managers and everything else, you went along with the process. And for a lot of people, that's the very frustrating part. And you have to be willing to follow it. And
interesting.
You did.
Interesting. I've always been very good at dealing with feedback and criticism in different forms. I believe it's valuable and it's going to help make me better. So I think that my mom has always told me I'm great with criticism, and I believe her there. So.
No, it makes a big difference.
Yes.
And you have to, it's no matter what area it's in, you've got to be willing to step over it and go on to the next. Well, you did a good job, Madeleine. I really enjoyed it. My Favorite Terrible Thing, a new novel, and you're going to like it, everyone. And then I'm sure the next one is going to come out when?
Next year, same time next year.
Okay. Enjoy the baby and everything else. And I look forward to continuing the journey with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Joan. This has been a true pleasure.
I loved it. Thanks, Madeleine. We'll talk again. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC about an exciting new thriller, My Favorite Terrible Thing, and the author is Madeleine Henry. I'm Joan Hamburg. Stay tuned.